Hello everybody and welcome back to You Can't Win. This is Tom here and I'm joined by Don as usual. Today we have a very special guest. It's our friend Roy from Twitter, also known as Chiwi the Dog, or now Chiwi the God, which I have minor issues with the shirky connotations of the name, but we'll let that one slide. But yeah, how you doing, Roy? Nice to have you on.
Thank you, Tom. And hello, Don. Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So maybe we should just introduce the listeners to you briefly in case they don't know what you're about. So you have a fairly popular Twitter account. You post all kinds of different things, a lot of doggy pictures and stuff.
Yes, that's one of the services I provide on Twitter. Yeah, I did mention to Tom earlier that I did get suspended recently, unfortunately, and my new handle is Chiwi the God, which is sort of blasphemous. I wasn't sure how you two would take that, but it is a playoff of my old handle, Chiwi the Dog. So that's the new handle. But yeah, posting dog pics, posting random thoughts. And for some reason, people seem to like that. So I'm having a good time with it.
Yeah, I saw that. I was looking at some of your older tweets and like of the new account, and a lot of them seem to go like mega viral. And I don't know, like the chicken account, or like the dogs looking like chicken and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. It was pretty funny, but like all the different, I don't know. And we were talking earlier that also you're really into sort of like conspiracy stuff, like Tom. And, the whole lone wolf mentality and the suffering of people nowadays and stuff. And I was wondering, like, what kind of conspiracy stuff are you into, like, recently? Like, we had a few episodes of this over the past 2 years, but just things have been pretty hectic recently, so we haven't done, like, a lot of,
sure.
Like, research on the fun things that we like to talk about.
I am getting back into it just real quick, just for the listeners who like that kind of stuff. I've been watching about the Oklahoma City bombing. I'm going to watch some 9/11 stuff. I'm back on my bullshit. So
good times.
We'll have some episodes about that coming up soon, I think.
Yeah, so dog pictures, food pictures, random thoughts, low effort posts, but also my account. Not only those things I'm interested in, but I'm very interested in conspiracy theories. Some aren't really theories, in my opinion. I think everything I post is based in reality, whether people believe that or not. I was saying that to someone else that I could just kind of feel the desperation of people these days, and I'm just kind of going to talk about what I'm interested in lately. And that's kind of what I'm interested in lately, like what's making people tick out there. And when I do go outside, I do go outside, by the way. I'm not always on Twitter. But then when I do go outside, I kind of feel it. People are on edge these days. They're very stressed, and I don't blame them. There's a lot of stuff going on these days, and there's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of strife. Yeah, sure. I try to focus on the good stuff of my life, but kind of one of the downfalls of myself is I like to put myself in other people's shoes, kind of empathize with what they're going through day to day. I mean, that could kind of seem like not a downfall, but I'm constantly doing that, and like and I could just feel how desperate people are these days, and what I'm interested in is how that translates to these kind of random acts of violence and these things that we see. Like Don mentioned, lone wolf. That's a very American thing in a way, and it's one of our best exports, I think, too. And I think it's just going to increase. And and on my other account, on my old account, I did a lot of these kind of predictions in a way, and like all the replies would be like, oh, Chiwi, Roy, stop these posts, like these things keep coming true, and I'm like,
Oh, really?
I tweet a lot, and not, and I'm going at kind of like a less than 1% hit ratio, so I'm not predicting everything, but unfortunately it seems like some of these kind of major things, for better or for worse, I keep predicting, like the day of the Atlanta massacre of the massage parlors, like an hour before, I kind of, just off the top of my head, was just kind of, I was really worried about how things were going, how the pandemic was really stressing out people, and I can't explain it. Like, I just had a feeling something was going to happen. So what better to do than just post to thousands of people? So so I kind of posted. It just seems like things are going bad. People are being stressed from poverty, etc. It just seems like this summer is going to be very violent. There's going to be more people, doing acts of desperation, and then I think that was an hour before that massacre. So, and it got some traction, but then definitely after the event, it kind of blew up a little bit more. So, not to go on too long about that, about the Nostradamus stuff, but but yeah, like I am interested in what makes kind of the dark side of man tick, and I guess a lot of things I read and watch and are based in that subject.
So when you're sort of looking at these lone wolf acts and stuff, is it that there's this underlying current of desperation, and then randomly a person just sort of pops out of that desperation and maybe shoots a few people or something? And is it that there's some sort of either intervention or coordination or encouragement from other people? Because a lot of what we talk about on other episodes has been sort of like the institutional links, or links with like strange coincidences, or you had brought up Paddock earlier, and that's obviously one of the ones where people make a lot of those sorts of connections. I was wondering if you're interested in that as well.
Yeah, I mean, there is a darkness with some of these stories where I guess the answer is both. I'm just going to be direct, and probably it might sound weird, but I do think a lot of these things have kind of a bigger plan, so to speak, and I do think some of these things are just people being stretched to their limit, and they're kind of just lashing out in a very primal way, with modern machinery like guns, which are, for the record, I'm a gun owner, but I also at the same time do think there's a big, huge issue with guns in America. I think just there's too many, especially in my closet. But then
Yeah.
but then yeah, like Paddock, I talked to a lot of people more knowledgeable about psychology and this theory. I'm not an expert by any means on the Paddock theory. I just kind of have fun talking about it and posting about it. Maybe I post about it too as a kind of a rhetorical question in a way, so people will kind of play off of what I write if they're interested enough. But I do think there is a connection. I know that Tom is interested in MK Ultra, things like that. I'm not sure if Paddock is MK Ultra. I don't know if there were 4 shooters with M249 machine guns up there, belt fed, and then they took them with them when they went away after they shot him in the head, and then planned the whole scene. There's a lot of loose ends with that story that don't make sense. Like, where's his hard drive of his laptop? Why did he send emails to himself? Why did he take 4 solo cruises to the Middle East, Kuwait, UAE, and Jordan by himself, and then the other cruises. You know, who takes so many cruises, first of all? But then, you know, I never liked cruises. But then, the rest of the cruises, he was with his girlfriend. You know, with his Filipino girlfriend that we all know about. But yeah, it's just those solo cruises to the Middle East are just kind of weird. And then the whole kind of Saudi connection of his. You know, I'm not an expert at that theory. But then definitely, I do think there was some type of plan with him. I don't think that he is just one of these suburban guys that, or one of these incel, quote unquote, types that just kind of lash out at society. I just think it was too big. It was too well planned. I think there's too many discrepancies, but to answer your question, Don, I kind of do rant. I don't just rant on Twitter. But to answer your question, I think there's a little bit of both. I guess I am interested in how things work, how people think, and maybe in a way, not to stop it in society, but maybe to give myself some type of control of it in a way where in an uncontrollable situation, you know.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole thing of like you were talking about, like, you don't think it was like an incel kind of thing, or, you know, these really pat answers and explanations that kind of come up where it's just like, oh, he was just a crazy person and all that. Like, that is never very satisfying. And maybe some of these cases you can kind of say like, well, I guess that there's not enough to kind of point outside of that. But Paddock in particular, definitely, like, you outlined a bunch of different things that are worth looking at that kind of indicate that there was something else going on there. And there's other, you know, all kinds of different things. Like I mentioned the Oklahoma City thing, that I watched this documentary and listened to some interviews the other day, and that the explanation that you know, the kind of like government story for that also doesn't really add up. There was like a lot of weird connections to intelligence, and there was clearly like a separate, like, it wasn't the truck bomb. There was clearly C4 planted in the building prior to it, and they like obviously covered it up and all this kind of stuff. There's all this like weird stuff around that, and, you know, I'm willing to kind of accept, like, okay, so maybe the official story doesn't fit and they're covering something up, but like, why are they doing it? That's what always gets me about these things. Like, if something like Paddock and Oklahoma City and 9/11 and all these different things, like, let's just say for the sake of argument, they're all like false flag attacks, right? Like Alex Jones style false flag kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Like, what is the point of doing? I like, that's the thing. Like with Paddock, what purpose does it serve to have this guy shoot a bunch of people? You know, that's what I have never really found any kind of satisfying explanation for. Like, I don't get it, and the whole thing of like, you know, this is to create justification for war or something, that doesn't really make sense to me either, because we don't seem to really need to do that.
Yeah, we don't need that.
Yeah, if we want a war, we just go start a war. Like,
just
we've done
do
that
it
all over the place. Yeah, it doesn't really seem to need that kind of stuff. So that's something that I just really don't have any idea about. I was wondering if maybe you know, had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's kind of the $1 million question when we hit kind of a roadblock on all these theories, right? Like why? Like what for? And you know, it did stump me, and I continue to be stumped a lot of the time. But, you know, I'm thinking in the frame of like, all these things are kind of a cumulative psyop in a way. You know, that is a kind of a buzzword for lazy people, but I really do think that you know, again, speaking in cliches, the mind is a powerful thing, and I do think these things create sort of this psychological implant in our heads, and I'm not talking a microchip. That's already covered by the vaccine that we're all getting. But then more of kind of a conceptual implant, I think, and and I don't think we can underestimate what type of traumas these type of things have, just when it's constantly like boom, 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 like every year, or like all these protests from last year, and just seeing the National Guard march down the street, and then like no matter what you feel about whatever happened to some of these motorists that were killed by police, it doesn't really even matter, because that's a kind of a different form of trauma that we're all witnessing. But then just these events, I'm talking the aftermaths, the riots, or if we're talking like war, you said like America has a war almost every year, maybe every half year. Like there's still wars going on, and whether that's big wars every 12 years or every 6 years, or these covert wars that we hear about. But all these things, like if you live in America, I think you have a different form of trauma. We're supposedly like the richest country in the world. In my opinion, America's only great if you're super wealthy. Otherwise, it's kind of like a third world country in a way. But I do think that for me, I can't speak for anyone else in the world and what they're kind of the hardships that they're going through. But in America, I think we're constantly bombarded by imagery, propaganda, and things like that, and these conspiracy things. These events that are leading to these conspiracy theories. In my opinion, it's just a constant kind of way of manipulation. I think, and I'm always going to give kind of the devil's advocate. there's always a kind of a schizophrenic voice in my head that is the contrarian, and I think that maybe that's caused from my horrible repliers on Twitter that caused this psychological thing of me. But then I think it's healthy in a way sometimes to kind of step out of my mind in a way. But then like they'll say, oh, maybe it's just the way I think, but then I do think there's a molecular change that happens when all these events happen, and I don't think there's any studies that show what all these events are doing to us, on a very micro molecular level. I think it's changing us, changing the way we think, changing the way we consume. And at the end of the day, I don't want to say it's about money, but it is. And I think it's a form of control. And yeah, I that's not too short of an answer to your question, Tom. But I do think that's part of it. I think it's a kind of a psychological weapon in a way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you mentioned MK Ultra earlier. The thing that's interesting to me about MK Ultra is that, people talk about like it as a form of like brainwashing and programming and all that kind of stuff. And I think people get sometimes a little carried away with that idea and think that like the Manchurian Candidate, like the movie, like it works like that, where like there's like a code word that activates the robotic assassin kind of a thing. But I mean, the thing that's really revealing about MK Ultra is that, I mean, they did try to investigate, like, is this possible? Can we mind control people? Can we brainwash people to do our bidding, kind of a thing? And what they found was that trauma, like exposing someone to an extreme level of trauma, does affect them psychologically to the point where it makes them very manipulable, and if that's something that they are wanting to do on a mass level, I guess that makes some sense. I think that's a plausible explanation, but it's so evil, you know what I mean? Like, it's just
yeah.
I mean, I think it goes beyond, like you said, you think it's about money. I don't know about that. Like, I'm thinking at this point, I kind of think a lot of these people have more money than they know what to do with. And so money as a motivation doesn't really make that much sense to me. Like, I think it makes sense on a smaller scale for like a lot of the bit players, but at the very top, or like kind of the the core motivation for it, I think there's something else going on. Like I think there's something that they're after that you can't just buy with money. That's the thing that kind of creeps me out the most.
All right, let's just get weird here, Tom.
Let's do it.
Like, what if all the talking about conspiracy? Like, there was that guy Michael Aquino. He was a NSA, kind of a higher up general, actually, which is kind of scary. He had these kind of Grandpa Munster eyebrows. He kind of looked like a combination of Liberace and Grandpa Munster, and these kind of very Wuhan bat like eyebrows that you'll never be able to forget. But yeah, he was a higher up general in the NSA, and then he kind of spearheaded the Temple of Set. And the reason I mentioned that is, let's say for the sake of this argument that there are dark forces in the government like that, using the occult, not that I dwell on it, but I have watched, and read these books about the Nazis and the occult, for fun. And it's, very entertaining and, very wild, but for the sake of this discussion, like, let's say that there are dark forces in the government and they are using the occult and these kind of dark energies. I used to think, kind of a month ago, on my old account, and I, like losing my old account, like I don't miss kind of like the followers in a way, but I miss kind of like my ramblings because I could always remember how to search them. But then one of the ramblings was that I was going off on this topic about the dark forces and kind of the satanic forces in a way. I call them kind of like the black, the dark hole of the government. Like if they're using these energies, and if let's say socialism, for the lack of a better word, is a way of kind of collecting all these positive kind of the light forces of society or America. And there are a lot of good people doing good stuff, like I'm not so cynical that I don't think that, but what if a way for the satanic government to dismantle that collectivity, or the socialist kind of collective consciousness? Like I don't want to sound like Marianne Williamson here, but then like what if that is kind of a powerful thing? And I do think it's a powerful thing. And what if the government is using these types of events, whether it is red flag or a false flag or not, like these type of events to kind of dismantle that social collective consciousness. And I do think that, I do believe that, to be honest. I do believe there are dark forces. And I do believe that socialism, not in the political sense, but in more of a spiritual sense, is something that is constantly being challenged and being dismantled by people from around the world. Like right now, I don't know if you guys talk about current events, but right now there's things going on in the Middle East for sure. And the way our mind works, these dualistic things like dark and light, evil and good, becomes very blurred. And I think on purpose, like it's always the Jews versus the Palestinians, or the Israel versus Palestine, America versus Islam, all these things. When it's, when in reality, I think the Christians and the Jews had more of a animosity towards each other from the beginning of time of religion, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but then like the way these, the framework of the media and the way things are the way things we are forced to think about, I think on a molecular level again, is to dismantle the thought that we can come together and defeat the dark forces, because I think, you talked about it's not money, it's not about the accumulation of money. They got billions, trillions, right? So it's like, I do think, that's at play. Like, to stop whatever that can beat them is us uniting. Not to be cheesy, but I think, that's the only thing that can enact any type of change, and they know it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that if you do have that, I think one of the useful sort of functions of that way of looking at things is saying that it can be this ferment of lone wolf people going out and doing these one-off attacks. They don't necessarily have to have people feeding them into that role. Mm-hmm. They could just be they can be sort of a natural result of that sure. dark sort of ferment, but that act still serves the role that they would, that the sort of overarching system would want it to happen, kind of thing. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that idea that it doesn't need to be these people being put into play all the time to achieve some sort of specific policy goal, especially not in some exact way, like we need to do this to start a war or something like that, or we need to do this to scare people about this particular thing. It can just be that, as you said, that psychological mm-hmm. horror at a molecular level that is changing how we view our neighbors and stuff, how we view ourselves. So yeah,
and
right.
And I like to think of it, this thing, cryptocurrency, as kind of a metaphor for that, in a way, like the commodification of the violent acts, like you said, by the government. Like they don't have to force these things to happen. They just kind of use the end product of what happened to. They're like, oh great, these guys are going crazy and shooting people. Hey, we can use this to our advantage. Like, I kind of think of cryptocurrency in a way like it's kind of the best scam. It's kind of the best thing to make money with no effort, with no product, with no overhead. Really, it's just kind of like manipulating the numbers, pump and dump, and letting kind of like the end line suckers foot them with the bill, in a way. I know that I know
Ponzi.
Yeah, I know. In a way, and it's very convenient for them. So in a way, I look at everything in that scope. The idea that kind of the people at the top, like Tom said, a pyramid scheme, are using these things that happen later on for their own benefit, and kind of like a convenient way. I think it goes hand in hand with the financial markets too. I don't even really know how the stock market works these days. But I know that it's controlled by super powerful computers. So you have those things going on. We have these psychological operations going on. It just seems like even if you wanted to enact change, there's just these powerful forces that are constantly running while we're sleeping, even, and it's kind of an unchallengeable, unbeatable apparatus.
Yeah. You were mentioning the Temple of Set earlier, and I was just sort of thinking about all the stuff you've been talking about in the context of black magic or whatever, this kind of satanic ritual thing that people will talk about in reference to this stuff. And, I think that's an element of it. There are people that are into that do operate at high levels in the government, or at some level, in relation to all this stuff that's pretty bizarre. And,
mm-hmm.
but what I'm thinking about is it's not even it's not like that's the core purpose. It's not like all the people in charge are actually Satanists and what their actual plan is to do this like satanic ritual kind of MK Ultra mass trauma stuff, and they want to like just spread misery or whatever. I think it's more that the nature of evil as it exists in the world and the way that it works, and the way that they seek to like what they see as their enemies happen to be like, you know, you were talking about like the light forces and like socialism as you described it, are as being like they see that as their enemy, you know. So it's more that like the satanic kind of black magic stuff like incidentally makes sense. Like it makes sense in terms of like what they see as their goals and stuff. So like the idea of like blurring the line between good and bad, of elevating the ego, of you know, glorifying like the individual will and all this sort of stuff, and kind of blotting out a sense of like moral responsibility to one another.
Are you reading from the Satanic Bible right now, or what are you?
No, I'm
just kidding. Like I mean, like I mentioned, I do read a lot of weird things. I have read the Satanic Bible. I have read some Temple of Set text just for research purposes, and it's all kind of like mumbo jumbo, you know. Talk about kind of
right
at the Aleister Crowley stuff, you know, do what thou wilt and all that. Like I and you know, Alex Jones and the Baphomet, the what's that called, the forest, what is that thing called where they all meet?
Bohemian Grove.
Bohemian Grove, yeah. Like I mean, all that stuff has been exhausted and covered. Like and you know, I've definitely dabbled in that and posted about those things, ironically. But then like, you know, I think those things have been covered ad nauseum, you know. But then but then the part that really rings true to me still is that there is a constant cosmic battle, I think. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I was just trying to get at the fact that I don't think any of that stuff is the core of it. I think evil itself is the core of it. And once you're so far gone that you are committed to evil rather than good, that you've just completely corrupted your humanity to the point where you don't see other people as kind of like as family in a sense, you know, like you see them as obstacles to overcome and to defeat. That kind of stuff makes more sense than you know, just like what we would consider like decent kind of, whether it's religion or you know, whatever, you know, like that stuff just has an appeal. It's like, oh yeah, that is true, that does make sense. So for the people that do get into that, I think that's the appeal, you know. I think it's almost a rationalization of their own corruption, you know.
Yeah, I agree. Both things are really infectious, I think. To put it in kind of a social media metaphor, like if you're constantly kind of spewing negativity online, it does bring people down, especially if you have a big platform, and if you spread positivity, and I think it's just as powerful in the other direction. I think it really impacts people in a good way. But then I think on Twitter, you know, you kind of need a balance of both to really strike a chord, I think, and not do it in a purposeful way, but then I do find myself kind of mixing it up just the way I feel. I kind of just post whatever's on my mind all the time, but I do think I was making that metaphor for social media, but then just out in the world too, just how you interact with people. Like I was talking about earlier on the show, that how people are just on edge all the time. And I mentioned before on my post how I just don't understand people who are rude to fast food workers or people who handle their food. That's got to be kind of like the dumbest thing you can do. You know, people will, you know, mess your shit up. Like literally, like they'll put things in your food. You'll get sick. I've had friends who mentioned that. I just don't understand.
Yeah, I worked at a Wendy's for a while, and I I've contaminated a couple burgers in my day.
Yeah, and people deserve it, but I don't understand people who are just rude to people who might already be down bad, right, in their life, and just kind of pushing people the wrong way. Like, I'm not a saint myself, but I do consider myself a kind of a charming, nice person, and I'm constantly kind of making people's days whenever I go out, and I pride myself on that. Like how can just a kind of a unassuming person like me kind of bring light to people's days, and because I think I enjoy that when people do that to me. So not to be too hokey, but I do think positivity it's very infectious, and
Mm-hmm.
I think the media is so powerful now that they don't even try anymore, like they're it's just constant bad news on TV. I don't really watch TV anymore, but then I get all my news from Twitter. uh, but then when I do watch the news, it's just I think there's a large portion of America that still watches the news and just kind of constantly has it on. Not as much as before. I think the boomers do, but
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
but even on Twitter, we're constantly bombarded by war, like especially right now, and I do think it does something on a molecular level. I do think that people are affected by it, and that's why I just kind of try to keep it to a minimum. I haven't been posting about this Israel stuff too much. What interests me are kind of the weaponry of it, and kind of like the defense industry part of it, because it seems like America's kind of losing their grip on everything. Like we're still the top manufacturer of weapons in the world, but it seems like everyone's like, you know what? I think we can do it a lot better than you guys, and
Mm.
and I think America's constantly insecure. It's like kind of like this. America's kind of like this Instagram model that is constantly insecure, constantly looking in the mirror, feeling bad about itself. Like, you know what? Like, I gotta start a new war. I gotta change my hair color.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're I gotta get a new car. Like, like, oh, I gotta whiten my teeth. Like, I gotta steal resources from Africa. I gotta kill Gaddafi, the richest man in the world, so he won't be a thorn in my side when I create AFRICOM. I gotta talk shit about my friend that is more beautiful than me. Like like just I just see that as a
Yeah,
metaphor. Like
sure.
like America's. That's why they I love this country in a way, but at the same time, um, it's kind of like they rob you, and then tell you that they gave you something in a way.
Yeah. Dirty hoe ass country. Yeah. The stuff you're saying about positivity is very true, I think. I also haven't really posted anything serious about like the Palestine stuff. Everything I've posted has just been a joke, and this is I don't know. This is the approach I take to like everything nowadays. Is like I'm not gonna tweet like serious thoughts on Twitter. Every once in a while, I have like some random thought that isn't like completely a joke, and I'll post that. But it's always like I don't know. I feel like you can't just be like a completely like just chipper, happy like you know. I mean, there's a place for that, puppy pictures or whatever that kind of thing. But everyone is constantly bombarded with this stuff, as you said. So I think it's more helpful to make jokes about that kind of stuff to help lighten that up a little bit. You know what I mean? So, I mean, not in like a mocking way or like some kind of like vicious, mean, cruel sort of a sense, but just like,
Hmm.
it doesn't need to constantly be like super serious. Like, we all see the same footage. We all know essentially what's going on, or at least what's being reported. And so I don't know how hopeful it is to like be some kind of like Twitter activist who just like retweets all this news and stuff all the time. I think that
Mm-hmm.
there's a another side to that where you can play a role of just like, okay, well, here's a little goof that maybe you get a chuckle out of, and
Yeah.
like I saw this this thing in Gaza, like it was Eid the other day, right? Like Eid was
Yes.
actually when they started the ground invasion, I guess. And
Coincidentally.
oh yeah, what a coincidence, right? But it was footage of people in Gaza celebrating Eid, and they were all happy, and
Yeah.
it was just like a real celebration.
Yeah.
They were like sharing their cookies that they made and giving presents to the kids, and everyone was like laughing and smiling and everything. And like down the street there was fighting going on, but they were like, you know what, it's Eid, I'm going to celebrate. I'm not going to let this ruin my celebration. I think that's like that's really important too. It shouldn't always just be like, oh, we have to be really like sad and gloomy because there are bad things going on. Like that doesn't really help anybody. I think there's also like a productive use in being happy despite things, and trying to find the light side of things. So I don't know. So that's what I try to do with my jokes, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I find that it's sometimes I take a step back and I think to myself, like, 95% of the stuff that I and my friends like share to each other online is like bad opinions from someone else or something like that. Like, like it's not like maybe only like 5% of the stuff that I talk to people about is like, oh, did you see this good opinion that was a positive opinion that like helps build towards something different or whatever, and it's almost always, this is a bad take that someone made that maybe like reveals something about themselves or something, right? Like it's not just the fact that it's a bad opinion, it's also like this is a bad opinion that proves something that we knew about them secretly or something like that.
Right.
And I always think to myself, I'm like, I have to remind myself that like at some level that's sad and worse than the people that are doing that kind of thing. Like just being some person that's oblivious and writing bad takes and stuff is bad, but like being a person that just sits there being like, oh man, that guy's dumb, that guy's dumb, that guy's dumb. It's like, okay, well, yeah, but what's next? Like what's the next step after that? Like what are we going to build? What are we going to do that's different? What are we going to be happy about? So
Yeah, I really don't like that kind of thing. I just, like you said, I find it completely pointless. Especially when it's like, oh look, the Israeli ambassador said something in bad faith about Palestine. What a shocker! Like what is this? what does this change your worldview or something? Like, of course he's gonna say that. Like, yeah. I don't know. Like, what point are you?
Well,
you scoring points? So in what game here?
Well, good, good, poignant, relevant, well-researched, thoughtful, helpful, useful, relevant things posted don't really get a lot of traction. Negativity does, I think. And I think people rely on kind of bashing others to make themselves feel better, at a base level. But then yeah, actually, I would like maybe if there was like an account that kind of like pundits posting their W's or something where they're just constantly like good takes that people have done today, but that account will probably only have like 99 followers, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I've got like huge stack of bookmarks of articles that friends have written that I'm sure are great that I just haven't gotten to yet because it's so much easier just to fall into chats with people just being like, oh, this is this jackass is at it again or whatever. So
I'm guilty of that too.
Sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, we all are. I think that's where the annoyance comes from.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure where the what is it just discipline? Because I feel like that feeling of that like rumble of terror of just like things being bad in general. I think that really makes it difficult beyond the, you know, people point to, and I think it's true that it's like addictive to be online and stuff, but I think there's a secondary part of it, which is like it's addictive because it's a way of avoiding things that are more difficult, you know, like it's like it makes it so easy just to get caught up in chatting with people about bad things that are happening, because you know, it feels like anything could be ruined at any moment that of a project that you're working on or something like that. So yeah.
I was talking to someone the other day about distractions, and we were kind of talking about how there's like two kinds of distractions. There's the first kind, which is like you're in a library, you're trying to read or take notes on something, you know, you're like really focused, you're in there for the quiet, and then like someone comes in with like a trombone or whatever, you know, like, then they're just like making a racket, and then you can't focus on what you were focused on, and that was like a completely uninvited distraction. Then there's the other kind, which is you have some task in front of you that you need to accomplish, and you kind of don't feel like it, so you end up looking for distractions, you know. So like you're at your computer, you have some work to do or something, and then you see, oh, well, maybe I'll play some Slay the Spire now, and you go down and click that instead of getting to your work, you know. So that's a different kind of distraction, and I think that, I don't know, that this kind of stuff is maybe more that second kind, and that I think we're easy to conflate the two and just kind of think of anything that's distracting us as just being that first kind, when maybe there's a little bit of responsibility on our parts too to kind of like get away from it.
Yeah,
I agree. I mean, in a larger sense, maybe some of these events are distractions by Obama and Hillary to kind of shield the fact that they're still running the shadow government, you know. I'm joking, but you know, like I make a lot of jokes like that, like, you know, this entire Israeli-Palestinian thing, it's just a distraction, you know, from the liberal shadow government or something like that, you know, and it's just like, I agree that I agree that there's distractions all the time, and I think you just nailed it. My life, Tom, like my you just described everything that I do.
Well, I know from experience, so join the club. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot to be said. Like, you know, the question that follows then is like, okay, so let's say we're able to like have the self-discipline to put those distractions away, and now the only things that we really have to worry about are like actively intrusive things from like other people, and it's not just us distracting ourselves. Well, now what, right? And it doesn't have to be, I think, some big project, you know. It can just be that positivity stuff we were talking about earlier. Like I think that at least it's a place to start, right? Like if you're distracted, or you're allowing yourself to be distracted by that silly kind of negative stuff, then you're not doing anything to spread positivity. You're not, you know, I think that's helpful. Like those people in Gaza, I think them just carrying on with Eid and giving gifts to these kids meant more than all of the Twitter activism in the world. You know what I mean? I think that, like, even though it's a simple thing and maybe it doesn't change the face of the political situation whatsoever, to me that's not as important as these kids having a good Eid despite things, and having, like, you know, not having this one year that's like, oh, remember that time when Eid came and the Israelis invaded and that was Eid. You know, instead there's like this happy moment in their lives instead, you know, despite that.
Speaking of distractions, like sometimes, like I'm a visual artist. I like to do drawings and paintings, and speaking of distractions during that, like I kind of force myself to be distracted. I usually have like 2 or more screens playing like different movies, and I usually have a podcast going on while I draw. So like, I think I was mentioning to Tom one time that like I do consider my art practice a form of meditation. I don't pray as much as I wish I did lately, but I think my connection to God in a way is through my art when I'm in a trance type state, and I think that's pretty powerful. I think for me, when I'm doing that art, I could kind of be this kind of machine and automated in a way, and but I'm flesh and blood, but where all this talent or practice comes from, whether it's through practice and repetition, but I'm getting better. I always, I do believe in a higher power, and like I when I do see like a beautiful sunset, I do get some like a touch from something from beyond, so like, and I say that because I do feel the same way when I'm in that kind of hyper focused state when I'm creating my art.
Yeah, would you call it like a flow state?
Yeah,
kind of thing?
it is a flow state. I think I call it more of being in the zone. Like kind of like Michael Jordan when he was hitting all those 3-pointers, remember?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I just kind of I'm not always in the zone too, but I got to force myself to kind of to start working in order to maybe get into that zone. You can't just get into that, whether you're a writer or a video editor or a music creator, like you have to force yourself to sit in front of the typewriter or whatever, in my case the desk, and but yeah, like I do have multiple sensory overload things going on, and I think I do that purposely. I think I wanted to give this example because like I have like multiple distractions going on, yet I could kind of zone that out. Well, first of all, I don't my art studio or my room to be quiet while I do my art. It's very scary in a way. But I'd like to have like all these things going on. Speaking of distractions, like all these things going on purposely, inundated on myself.
It might be like an anti-distraction. Like there's so much going on that it like blocks out the possibility of being distracted by any one thing or something.
Yeah, and like I do have new podcasts on, but usually the movies that I have on in the background are movies that I've seen like hundreds of times, like whether it's Goodfellas or like Schindler's List or like Saving Private Ryan or like or like Heat, the movie Heat, like all these things, like these very, I kind of have these kind of like violent things going on in the background while creating something kind of peaceful. I just kind of like to force these extremes on myself, and I could see people thinking this is weird, but it works for me,
Well, artists, right? I mean, that's what you're supposed to be like.
Sure, that's what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I think like that's what we're supposed to be doing as humans. We're supposed to be finding the thing that
I do really agree with that,
where we get in that flow state or get in the zone that, you were talking about. That's like kind of a connection to God in a way. I think that's the whole point.
Tom, I really agree with that, I really do think, people really shortchange themselves in a way, saying they're not creative or anything. I think even that guy that kind of denounces himself and says he's not creative, I think his ancient ancestor was very creative, like pounding a stone into a tool or something. Like if some conceptual artist these days like 3D printed like a arrow, like a stone arrowhead or something, he would probably sell out galleries these days. Like I'm just saying like anyone can, like, this is my art teacher background coming in here. Like I always told even like non-art majors that took kind of like my beginning painting classes, like I taught art for several years, like like that everyone's creative, everyone's an artist, everyone can draw. Like if everyone, I kind of personally don't like people who do like realistic art, even though I can I can do that. I can draw realistically, but it just doesn't interest me. Like I kind of like kind of more unique styles. Like these days there's very simple cartoony styles, and that's fine too. But I'm still talking like kind of a fine art, kind of like in the framework of this fine art, and not comics. But then like I think everyone like drawing a hand can really make it interesting in their own way. Um, so I just think that everyone should kind of try to tap into their creative side, and I think I think Twitter in a way, when it's at its peak, it kind of showcases everyone's creativity, and I think that's why I like Twitter. When people are honest with themselves on there, and kind of aren't afraid to put themselves out there too, and kind of get in the zone on Twitter too.
Yeah.
Yeah, or anything. It doesn't have to be anything spectacular in that sense. Like you're talking about just people like even just drawing for themselves. It doesn't need to be like you make life or world changing art, or
Yeah.
you get your name written down in the history books or anything like that. Like I don't think that's what we're here to do. I think we're here to find something that we can do that gets us in that zone that like feels right. And then if we're all doing that rather than getting like MK Ultra mass trauma programmed all the time and distracted in that way, I think that would make the world a lot better place.
Mm-hmm.
Are we gonna figure out how to better the world by the end of this episode? I certainly hope so.
I think we're on our way.
I think we are. But yeah, like I was thinking about like I really do think everyone is an artist. Like that sounds so cheesy, but I used to tell people like, but in order to be a creative, whether that's writing or whatever, I think like to kind of compare writing and like a drawing, which is two things I love. So if you compare those two things, like you can't just write a paragraph, I don't think. And I'm not saying, and I'm talking about like kind of digesting something. Like when I see kind of young artists, they draw like a head, and it's pretty good, but they don't finish like the neck and like the shoulder of it. I don't know why young artists do that. I keep wanting to like not hit them over the head like an Asian parent, but then like I kind of want to like grab them and like you should finish like the entire like kind of shoulder and the entire thing, like just like writers, like you can't just write a paragraph, like write a like finish that essay or like that short story, like because I say that because once you finish it and then like you get to a point of like actually finishing a piece or like a page or a chapter, then you can go on to the next one, and I don't know what it's called, but then like when I finish an actual like drawing, like it's this kind of transformative thing for me where it kind of shifts me into a whole new kind of mind, and it's like I could put that part away now, and like
Mm-hmm.
and I can move on to the next one, and I don't think it's the product, I don't think it's the drawing, I don't think it's the page or the story, I think it's the mindset. I think the mindset is the creative part, like so you're kind of that by transforming yourself and completing one thing, you're allowed to go on to the next idea, and then
Right.
the product is just your way of kind of like proving that to yourself that you are on the next project or the next idea, and like my satisfaction comes from the fact that I did actually as kind of just this unassuming human created this, and then I'm on to the next thing. It almost makes me feel invincible in a way, in a world where I'm powerless, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I find for writing something similar where I found it for many years that I could write something, especially for school or something, but like last minute and just get it out. And it was very satisfying to me to get it done in a very short period of time,
Yeah.
under constraints and things like that, and then just get it out of the way. But what I've had to sort of start to try to learn, at least over the last few years, is to start to try to rewrite things and try to edit and actually, I think that it's kind of similar to the completing the shoulders of the drawing kind of thing, right? Where it's like
Mm.
I have to take something that I'm writing and actually, make it the best that it can be instead of just dashing it off and then being like, okay, next idea. And I think that, one of the things that has forced me to do that in some ways is, I when I started writing like just little joke articles for Harper's, and it was a process with back and forth with like editing, and I was very lucky where most of my pieces were accepted, and most of them were, they did come back with like just covered in red of edits that needed to be done, but it was one of those things where it wasn't that painful because, because it was like at least that initial thing of, okay, this is good enough that we can work on was good enough. But I'm kind of in a tough situation now where I'm trying to do that like process of, just creating things completely from scratch
Mm-hmm.
that are a bit more serious or a bit more like, like I've kind of gotten away with something for a while where I was just writing short joke articles and stuff, and to move on from that at all,
Mm.
I have to kind of have the discipline to try to make it like a whole complete project for myself instead of just like the deceptive thing about Twitter is that you can just spend a few seconds jotting off something and then sending it into the void and you get instant feedback. But like it's not like it's not carefully written in the same way that like a article is. Like it's not long enough to have the full. It's not. It's a way of being snappy and kind of sarcastic and stuff, but it's not as much a way of being like, here are my collected thoughts on a matter that, So anyway, that's what that made me think of. So yeah.
Yeah, you know what this is making me think of is when I played baseball, one of the things that was really important that really improved my swing was the follow through. Was like learning how to follow through on the swing.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking about with this stuff. It's like it's important to follow through with your work so that you can, like you were saying, Roy, to get to the next thing. And that can be a little bit, I don't know, like maybe scary, or maybe there's, whatever it is, you might want to hold back on getting to that next stage because you're like unsure of what that might be. But it's important to do that or you just stay stuck. So you want to work through something and then see it through to completion so that you can move on to the next thing. So you're not just like constantly in this state of like, well, I'm kind of on this thing and it's sort of like amorphous and no end in sight. You know what I mean? Like you want to follow through.
Yeah, like there, there is something about exhausting something and completing something. Those ideas of going on to the next idea. But what I wanted to mention was that, like in art, for example, there's artworks, and then like a group of artworks is a series, and then a group of series is kind of like, I guess, a collection, so to speak, right? So, so like just because you're done with a work or like you're working on two works at the same time, I think it should be in the same series. Like, let's say I'm doing like cities. I'm drawing cities, right? Like I have a series on cities, and I kind of make these like dystopian, conceptually abstract drawings of kind of decaying cities in a sense of like I call them cartographical abstracts, and I work on several of them at the same time, and it's like and what I was trying to illustrate earlier was that like I don't just move on to the next idea right away. The series is a group of works that I am working through my ideas, and then like who knows how many works will make up a series. I don't know. Like I have to exhaust a series too. and luckily does that make sense in a way? Like
for sure.
That's
it's
why,
almost like it's one idea.
yeah, it's one big idea but made up of smaller parts, but then like
Right.
I can't really get on to the next series until I'm exhausted with that. And it might take my whole life, but then but I guess I'm talking more about the process, where I really do think it changes me when I complete something, and I think in a more general sense, I think we began talking about this just like the layman, the guy or woman that doesn't consider themselves an artist. I hear that all the time, and it's like accomplish something. For Christ's sakes, just like it's the satisfaction of cleaning your room, whether that lasts,
Yeah, shout out Jordan Peterson.
right, whether that lasts like a day and you have Monster Energy cans scattered the next day. That's okay, like if you want to wash your car or like do a garden. I think that's all art. I think like cooking is art. Like I don't.
Yeah.
I constantly. I'm at the risk.
It's creative.
Of,
creative work, really.
I'm constantly at the risk of like out cheesing myself, but I guess I'm a I guess I'm a cheesy guy. Like I like to think about wholesome things a lot of the time, because I think my mind constantly wants to think about the dark side. So, but naturally, I think I am wholesome, and I like to think about these cheesy things in life because it makes me feel good. And it's like, I really do think that everyone needs, like they said, idle hands is the devil's playground in a way. But then like, I think everyone can be creative in a way. That's why like, I'm so drawn to people who have these kind of obsessive, for the lack of a better word, hobbies, like whether that's cars or guns. I've always, or like sports. Those are three kind of hobbies of mine, and I really get along with people, and like I've been made fun of lately for being autistic because I tend to rant about certain subjects, and I think people are having a good time kind of comparing me to an autistic person, but like I'm kind of drawn to people who are obsessed with these kind of subjects and hobbies, and I think that's because like I want to learn from them, and like I want to stick around and maybe I can absorb something. But I think everyone should find an obsession or a hobby, or like and I think that's where a human being can kind of get creative. You have to immerse yourself into something and get in the zone. That I think maybe that's the title for this podcast. Like
sure.
Like it's just like I don't know what it is. Like how do some elders in Islam, how do they are they able to recite those hadiths, or like and like memorize the entire Quran, or and sing so beautifully those words, I'm constantly and there and it might be a gift that you're born with, but then like just even powerful things like that, or there's people who just to build things, like I think not to be trad here, but I think every man should be able to build something, whether that's like an actual kind of machine or something, or whether that's art or creativity, and I think women are artists too, women are creative too, but I think every man needs to build something, needs to leave behind something, and I still believe that.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Islam. I was kind of thinking about the idea of like perfection, And
Mm-hmm.
because I think some of the stuff that holds people back from doing this is like they don't want to create something imperfect. Like they're afraid, like they have an idea in their head, and when they try it out in reality, it's not quite right. It doesn't really match, or maybe it's really off. Like especially if you're trying to build something, you want to just build something simple and useful, practical, like a table or something, and you just completely mess it up. It's all wobbly and but you can perfect a craft over time, but I think part of that is that follow through, is the completion of the thing to the next thing to the next thing. You can't just kind of work on one thing year after year, like one table, until it's like perfect. That's not how it works. You have to do one table, then the next table, then the next table, and that goes for like personal development too. Like when you're trying to perfect your virtues and discipline your flaws, like it's the same thing. You can't just be stuck until it's perfect. It's a constant, like, you make some progress, you just keep working at it, and eventually you get there.
Yeah, didn't Iron Man, Tony Stark's, didn't he keep his first energy what is that, generator thing in a glass container, I think, to remind himself of his first imperfect project. He was constantly improving it, making it powerful, but he always kept it to remind himself, I think. Right?
Sure, it makes sense. I don't know you. I'll take your word for it.
I'm not really a Marvel guy, but I do like Iron Man for some reason. I've always liked those movies.
I like the first one, I guess. I don't really remember it very well, but I appreciate all of Hollywood's depictions of like the Middle East and stuff. It's always pretty entertaining.
Right. I think I like the kind of the defense contractor or the defense company kind of metaphors going on with Iron Man. I don't know.
Yeah, and Robert Downey Jr. was good in the role. I thought that was a good casting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so before we get like too far with solving all the world's problems, maybe we should jump into some questions and wrap this sucker up. All right, so we'll just be quick with the questions. We got a couple specifically for you, Roy, so we'll fire these ones off. So the first one is, was the moon landing fake?
The moon landing fake. I don't know about that, but I think there are colonies already on Mars. I think there's like ultra billionaires on Mars already, and
Musk babies.
I do think so, and I think all those kind of failed space flights that crash down. I think it's kind of like money laundering of his to kind of like to write off costs. But I think those are SpaceX kind of entertainment vacation flights up there, or whatever they're talking about, or these test flights are to bring supplies up there. All this is kind of said with a tongue in cheek, but then I kind of do believe this. But I don't know if the moon landing was fake and recorded and filmed by Stanley Kubrick or not. I used to think of that, but I'll just say no. I don't think we really landed on the moon.
Okay. Next question is, if you were going to sew two guns to Don's hands like guns akimbo, which guns would you choose?
Oh, easy question. Two M4 Benelli automatic shotguns.
I don't know. I'm not strong enough, I think, for automatic shotguns. That's I don't know. I feel like I would really hurt myself with that, but maybe little tiny, like the Walthers or something like that, PP7s, whatever the
PPK
James Bond. Yeah,
that's I'm holding one right now as we speak.
Okay. Okay, that's good. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Was there any more questions, Tom? Or
nope. That's the end of them.
Okay. Well, yeah, I really appreciated the conversation I had. I mean, it went dark places, but I had fun, and we'll end positive. That's our goal in life. So yeah.
Thank you for having me on. I think I have kind of a feeling of positivity, so I think this entire conversation went well. I had a great time for the whole time, so thank you for having me on, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Roy. We'll have to have you back on again sometime.
Sure.
So thanks for listening, everybody. If you want a second episode of You Can't Win every week, you can do that by subscribing to our Patreon, and you'll get that as well as access to our Discord, where you can chat with us and our lovely community. And if you want to send us anonymous questions, you can do that by going to our Twitter account @YouCanWinPod, and you'll find a link to the Curious Cat pin there where you can send in those questions. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you again next week.